something that has really affected research within industrial organizational psychology has been all the advances made in communication technology over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Um, Back 20 years ago, less than half of Americans had cell phones. Today, almost every American has a cell phone. Just 10 years ago, in 2010, according to a study, 1 out of 3 Americans had a smartphone, whereas today it's more like 4 out of 5. So, just how readily we can be reached by work, through work, or emails and text messages, fielding calls off the clock, it's just really affected the relationship that employees have with their work. So, now as a result of that, the boundaries between work and what is not work are a lot less clear. So as a result of that, there's a lot of research that's been conducted on being able to disconnect and detach from work mode and what we need to do to recover from work and the effects of these lines being blurred. For example, in my career, I used to manage social media for a dental practice that I worked at, and it starts as something that just stays within the brick and mortar building and stays within your working hours, and eventually, it's going to bleed into home life because, well, if you run out of time to do it at work, you can just do it at home, or when you're getting messages on the work phone that you keep with you, you really lose those clear boundaries. So, like I said, a lot of research has been done on how to keep those boundaries or how to maintain them, or what is the effect of, like I said, those blurred lines where work now starts bleeding into personal time. I think I would be remiss not to mention the importance of the events of 2020. And I realize that the question is addressing changes in research or what's inspired research in the field. But I do think that 2020, as we're going to see moving forward, is going to spur a lot of new research that's going to come as a result of COVID-19 and the fact that so many people are telecommuting now and people are working from home when they wouldn't normally have been. And now we're seeing changes in the office as far as how many people are actually coming to brick and mortar buildings every day. And how can we stay productive when we're not physically in contact with our employees? And how do we make sure people are really going to be productive and on top of their tasks when we're not there to monitor them? Or how do you keep morale up and how do you keep that sense of commitment to your organization when you're not working alongside your coworkers the way you normally would be? I think also companies are going to try to cut costs now that they don't need to lease as many office spaces with people just working from home. So I think, like I said, I think I'd be remiss not to mention the fact that 2020 will undoubtedly change what research looks like in industrial organizational psychology, and we're going to learn a lot from the events of this year and going forward. I think the social issues that we've seen play out in the public eye are also going to affect research moving forward. And what does fairness look like in the workplace? And what does equality and being sensitive to social issues and issues of diversity and fairness, what does that look like in the workplace? And how can we monitor it? How can we improve it? How can we make everyone feel included and safe and supported? So again, I think I would be remiss not to mention COVID-19 and again the social justice issues of the year. I think that's definitely going to affect research going forward. So, describing the socialization process for the students in my graduate program, I'll be honest, I didn't feel my personal experience, I didn't feel a big socialization process. I didn't feel there really was much of a process. Every class that I've started, module 1 is always discussion board introducing ourselves, which is cool. And then I feel like it doesn't really take off from there. My last experience with higher education was a more traditional experience on campus with my advisors who I knew and I would meet with every couple months, and knowing the professors in my department, whereas so far being an online student, it's quite different and I don't feel the same support. Or even, classmates, again, outside of the initial introductions, it doesn't really go anywhere from there. I do enjoy discussion board posts every week where we, reply to other students' posts, and I'll respond to someone else's post, and I kind of wait to see if they'll say anything back to me. And that's been cool, and seeing everyone's different opinions, or the different thought processes. Everyone kind of interprets information differently and views it differently, which has been awesome. But as far as an actual socialization process, I'll be honest, I really felt like there was a lack of one. Or maybe that was just my experience, the fact that I'm trying to do school full time and work full time. Maybe I just wasn't as engaged with the program as other students, and maybe other students really felt like there was a better socialization process. Um, so yeah, for me, I'd actually say there was probably a lack of one. Reducing the work family conflict and preventing it in the workplace is what we studied last week in module 3. And of anything I've studied so far in my master's program, this has got to be the most interesting topic that we've covered. And personally, having tried to balance demanding work schedules and with a personal life, I got excited reading about it in Module 3 and seeing all the different ways that companies can improve the lives of their employers if they just know how. And I got very passionate about being able to help companies do that and make people's lives better and their family lives better. And kids get to spend more time with their parents and parents with their kids. It's awesome. Um, Anyways, so we see that there's a lot of ways that companies can help prevent this work family conflict. There's the concept of flex time, which is giving the employee a little bit more control over their own schedule. So as long as the productivity is there and they're getting things done, they can kind of create their own schedule, obviously within reason, depending on the organization. But rather than working the traditional, very rigid 9 to 5, employees can actually shift that a little bit. Say we've got a kid we've got to pick up early from school one day. Well, maybe you come in early that day or you work late another day. So it's still getting the productivity for the organization while the employee gets a little bit more life satisfaction. There's also the concept of remote work, which is a result of, like I mentioned in the first slide, advances in communication technology. Now that the internet's so fast and we've all got phones and emails and everything else, this allows employees to work from home. And again, it within reason, depending on the organization, and there are some things that will have to be done on site. But when possible, if we could allow employees to work from home, again, reduces the work family conflict. There's also flexible paid holiday structure. Employees can get a certain number of holidays off in a year and perhaps get to choose when they would like to take those holidays. I believe I mentioned it last week, but someone with kids might be more apt to take off Halloween so that they can go trick or treat, whereas someone without kids might not. There's also the concept of cross training to relieve employees when there's unplanned absences like sick days or family emergencies that an employee's got to miss work for, to reduce the tension between them and their coworkers and not feel like they're falling behind and create stress for the entire organization. Rather, we can cross-train employees so that there's always someone else who can do that person's job if they've got to miss. More than anything, too, I saw looking through some of the research is just a a supportive culture on the part of the company makes a huge difference, it seems like, for members of an organization. Just a supervisor who checks in regularly to make sure everyone's doing okay and shows interest in their employees' personal lives and their family lives and has an attitude that, that's what's important. Not I think we've all worked in places where, work comes first and family second. But communicating the idea that or family is important and that the company is there to support them in that aspect of their life is incredibly impactful for employees. And it really improves the employees' commitment to the company when they feel like their supervisors and their management are supportive of the things that they care about. Were I asked to develop an employee performance assessment, I would do two things. I would start by using a multi-level performance evaluation. So this is evaluating employees on the level of employees and a level of the team and the organization. So the employee level would be their job-specific duty and behaviors, whereas the team and organization level would be their effect on the team and organization as a whole. So this could be their attitudes or what the behavior is outside of that role, maybe interacting with others on the team, coworkers, clients, and customers, what have you. So it's specific to the job, and then it goes outside of the job. Murphy divided these into in-role and extra-role dimensions, which is pretty much the same thing. In-role would be pertaining to performing tasks of the job, behaviors within that specific role, once again, and then extra-role would be interpersonal behaviors just within the workplace. Chatting, again, this is chatting with members, clients, employees, customers, and how one affects the company culture as a whole, or how one represents the company culture. I think we've all had coworkers who perhaps on paper are great and they get the job done, and maybe they bring in good numbers. If this is a sales oriented position, maybe they make great sales, but they've got a terrible attitude and their effect on the other team members is not good. They're unpleasant to work with and they're unpleasant to be around, but they're making the company money or they're hitting certain goals. So it's incredibly important that we assess employees not only according to their roles and their job description, but also outside of that, and the name that they're giving to the company and how easy they are to work with or what they're contributing to the team atmosphere. Murphy's List, it does cover, like I said, the interpersonal behaviors, also talks about downtime and off-time behaviors, destructive behaviors. However, I kind of like Campbell's model of job performance more. So Campbell's model of job performance it's broken down into 8 different pieces. It's job-specific task proficiency, which would be, once again, the inner role, according to Murphy's List. And then we have non-job specific task proficiency. And this covers everything from communication to the effort one puts in, to staying disciplined just within yourself, to facilitating team and peer performance. So this would be the interpersonal behaviors within the team, according to Murphy's List, or even just supervision of the team. And do you display leadership qualities? And then even management and administration type roles. Are you organized? Do you have the potential to be a good manager if you're not already? So this covers everything from the technical aspects to the job to just overall effort and the commitment to the organization. So personally, I would use something that looks more like Campbell's model of job performance, but I think it's important to stress that team members need to be evaluated outside of just their specific role within the team. And I think my favorite thing that I read in the text on this issue or on this subject was the fact that measures of effectiveness and productivity are not the same. So again, perhaps someone has really great numbers or they make really big sales, and that would be a measure of productivity, but are they effective? So we've got to take everything into account when we're assessing employees. So that's, once again, why I like Campbell's. Organizational constraints are anything that inhibits the achievement of a goal within an organization. So simply put, I think we can think of an organizational constraint as a thief of motivation. It's going to slow down progress. It's going to make a goal harder to accomplish, things harder to achieve. And an organizational constraint can be anything from frequent interruptions to excessive regulations or red tape that slows down an employee's progress. They can be intangibles like lack of support from a team, from coworkers, from supervisors, a shortage of time to achieve the tasks or to do them thoroughly and correctly, poor leadership, poor company culture. These can all be organizational constraints. Also, they can be tangible, like faulty equipment, lack of equipment, poor equipment. Could be lack of office space, lack of workspace, lack of funding, which can result in low wages, poor benefits packages, basically anything that's going to negatively affect the company and its ability to achieve. I think a good example of an organizational constraint that can lead to counterproductive behavior would be low wages or a poor benefits package, like I just mentioned. Employees will sometimes feel like they're not being compensated adequately by their employer, so as a way to make it even, so to speak, they essentially engage in employee theft or time theft, and they will perhaps take on personal tasks at work or while they're on the clock do non-work related activities as a way to get back at their employees, or perhaps with their salary they're leaving work early every day to get that time back since they don't feel like they're being compensated the way they should be, which we know this to be, like I said, we know this to be employee theft, but that's how two of those can directly relate. I think another great example of an organizational constraint that can lead to counterproductive work behavior is abusive supervision. And sadly, I think probably a lot of us have experienced this in our working lives. Abusive supervision is any behavior on the part of a supervisor that is demeaning or condescending to their subordinate. And this can be being overly critical of their subordinates, maybe taking credit for something they've done, not giving them adequate credit, speaking down to them in front of coworkers, clients, employees, customers, you name it. And so this can lead to counterproductive work behavior because the employee starts to grow resentful towards the entire organization, resentful towards the supervisor. It's, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, organizational constraints are just a thief of motivation, and we see here how the abusive attitude or actions of a supervisor towards their subordinate would really cause that. You wouldn't be motivated to help the team accomplish the goal when your supervisor would essentially get credit for that, and the company seems to be backing them. I think that under that same umbrella of abusive supervision would be not giving your employees enough credit, or not being supportive and appreciative and acknowledging the little wins and little achievements of employees. As a supervisor, you need to motivate your team, and poor supervision, as we see in the text, directly leads to counterproductive work behaviors. So if you're not motivating your team, they're going to be not only unmotivated, but losing motivation because they no longer feel that same commitment to accomplish the team goal.